Hi, this is Gil Moore, and you're watching Sonic Perspectives.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. I'm Rodrigo, and my guest today is the drummer of Triumph, Gil Moore. Gil, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on, Rodrigo.
Yeah, well, we're speaking in early February when the preparations for the upcoming Triumph tour are in full swing. Give us an update on how things are going.
Things are going great. I mean, Rick and I are rehearsing here at Metalworks, and Phil and Todd and Brand are going to be flying in another couple of weeks to join us, and we're working out a lot of, technical details about in-ear monitors and a lot of crazy tech stuff that's going on, just to really fine-tune the presentation.
Yeah, well, I read somewhere that it's your first time using in-ear monitors, right? So that's some adaptation to happen in there, right?
Yeah, well, I never had a double drummer set up before, except for when we
Right,
played in Edmonton. So Brent and I are kind of like, we have to have our own rehearsals with the double drums. And,
right.
part of it relates to the fact, I sing lead vocals while I'm playing. And if we're running a click track while I'm trying to sing, it gets,
Yeah.
it gets quite confusing to say the least. We asked ChatGPT today what they thought, and they said drummers that sing shouldn't listen to click tracks. So that's what ChatGPT thinks.
Right. Well, and it's your first tour in 30 years as Triumph. What was the moment when it starts to click and you're like, well, this is actually happening?
Really a series of steps, Rodrigo. Like it started really, I guess, with our documentary, and then there was this whole upsurgence of interest in the band. The next
Yeah,
thing that happened was our record label decided to do a tribute album, and they got, the great Mike Klink to produce it. And then he got all these, famous artists on our tribute album, which was an amazing thing that, and again, brought a lot of interest, back to the band with, everything from, Larry Gowan from Styx and Nancy from Heart and Slash and Phil X and all these great musicians and singers.
yeah,
So that was a stepping stone. And then I guess up here in Canada with the NHL playoffs, this was just kind of a fluke. They used Lay It on the Line
yeah,
when it looked like Edmonton might win the Stanley Cup last year, and they were playing it over and over and over again during the playoffs. And finally, Rogers Sportsnet up here, the big media company decided, well, we want you guys to play at the NHL finals. And I was kind of like, well, I always wanted to be a hockey player. So
yeah,
for me, it was like, okay, we're going to Stanley Cup playoffs, my only time to be in it. And we just decided for fun, for our kids and our wives and stuff, let's go do it. And
yeah,
called Phil, and Phil said, "Yeah, okay." So, but Mike couldn't make it, so we need a bass player. So he said, "I'm going to
yeah,
bring up Todd," and then we started talking about, the future and maybe doing a double drum thing. I said, "Well, like bring Brent," and so met Brent. I mean, he's an absolute great player. He's a genius as far as drum tech goes. Todd Kern's a rock star of all rock stars, and Phil
yeah,
X, when I got him in front of me and Rick Emmett like this, I have a double barrel shotgun and two of the best guitarists in the whole world. So
yeah.
it's a pretty wicked setup, honestly. And then we kind of went, uh, that was a lot of fun. What should we do? And then Live Nation goes, we want you guys to tour. So it fell together like that, if you know what I mean.
Right.
There was no crazy plan. It just was like how the ball bounced.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say I saw it coming because no one did, but it's fitting that it's happening right now. So yeah, it makes sense chronologically too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a series of events. You couldn't make this stuff up. So
Yeah. Yeah.
actually going to film like a part two of the documentary on
Mhm.
this tour. So there'll be a tour documentary.
Oh wow.
It
Okay.
kind of it kind of completes the story from the first documentary. Kind of ends with we're sort of going in the sunset, and there's like a big question mark. Okay, so what's next? And there is no what's next. So now we know what's next. So
Right, right.
fun.
So it's a lot of layers to that because there's like a mixed reality kind of concept rather than just, holograms and stuff like that. But there's a lot put on the live show, but also you're doing the documentary. So as a segue to whatever the next chapter is, right?
Yeah, the mixed reality concept's another thing that was see that was in the works for like 5 years,
Hmm.
and it kind of got the apple cart kind of got turned over when we put the live band together and went and did the NHL.
Hmm.
So it's not like we shelved it. We just sort of put it to the side for a moment and said, okay, let's concentrate on a rock and roll show here first. And then we're going to introduce a few of these what I'll call new style effects within our show. So there is going to be some stuff that you haven't seen before, but it's not going to be a mixed reality show per se. This is a rock and roll show, and we're going to feather in some of that stuff. And but over time, that's what I'm kind of looking to do is create something that it's really an extension of what Triumph was all along. We were always about the big theatrical aspect of the presentation. So it's really
Yeah.
no different than that. It's doing it with modern technology, with the advances in AI, with the advances in video, playback mechanisms, and so on. And then the illusion of the theater, like our great lighting designer, Paul Dexter, who's his company's called Masterworks, and I gotta say it's a good name for his company because
Yeah.
he is a master. And he's a master in the sense that he understands the stage, and he understands it from a theatrical sense, from the historical perspective. So I've always wanted to work and with someone that had that kind of vision because I thought, a lot of, rock bands were just kind of like the music might be great, but the presentation's kind of boring.
Yeah.
And then what I've
Yeah.
seen kind of like the DJs have gone off now in this whole other, realm that's kind of an interesting space because they kind of own it. And then, but a
Yeah.
lot of bands now they're going out, and then to me, a lot of the presentation, a lot of the video and stuff is kind of superfluous. It's just kind of like what I call video noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a bunch of eye candy that's really just kind of artifacts because it's not saying anything about the music. It's not tied to the music. It doesn't. It's just a bunch of flash.
Right.
And
Yeah.
flash is cool if it's used in a way that it links and locks to the music and the message in the lyric. And if it doesn't, then it's just a bunch of flashing and flotsam and jetsam, in my opinion. Maybe I'm too
Yeah.
critical. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I look at it like we're trying to build something unique and take something in a new direction. And that's what we've always tried to do back in the day, and we're still trying to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what was the biggest thing to adapt when getting ready for large arenas again? I mean, is it the physical element that you have to like now work out and make sure you're in shape, or the chops for drumming, or just the mental state of, going away for so many weeks?
I think it's those three things for me because I did
Yeah.
not intend on going back on the road. So, for example,
Yeah.
I finished this interview with you. I'm at my house, but I have a big gym in my lower level,
Yeah.
and that's a big double set of drums in there. And I don't need to do cardio on a treadmill because I can tell you what my BPMs are by tempos, right? That I
Right.
play, and I play them, and I can play them as long as I want. And yeah, that is a challenge, but it's been a fun challenge. I got a drum coach and at my school because I have a school at Metalworks.
Hmm.
And the first question when he said, "What do you want to know about drums?" And I said, "Pretend I'm 8 years old. Like, how do I sit in the stool? How do I hold the sticks? Let's start." And just take a clean slate and kind of go, forget everything you thought you knew. Let's try to build something unique in the concept of how you approach the drum set. So I'm doing that and I'm having a blast with that. As far as vocals are concerned, I said to start practicing, just
Yeah.
get back and I have a recording from my recording studio in my car. So I get in my car, I turn the car on. There's a track with no vocals. That's been good. And I
Right.
I got back with a vocal coach and did some tune-ups on that. And then on the mental side, the third thing you mentioned, uh, differences is my family. They're so enthused, and two of my kids are actually going to come on the tour with me.
Oh.
My third child is going to probably fly in for like a dozen shows.
Hmm.
So it's a family, and my wife will be there as much as she wants to come. So it'll be like a really great family affair as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the
Well.
thing I'm very lucky, I'll say one last thing. The very thing I'm very, very lucky is these people in this band. Like these people are not just great musicians, but I can speak for every single one of them. I've spent an awful lot of time, of course, with Rick Emmett and Phil X.
Mhm.
Not so much with Todd and Brent, but the time I did spend with them, I'll tell you what, we've got guys that are going to be, to use a sports analogy, it's going to be a very good dressing room because everybody's going to have a lot of team spirit and everybody's got a positive attitude. And Uh, it's going to be about being serious. It's about doing a great show. It's not going to be a party bus with a bunch of, you know, debauchery going on. This is about guys coming out that are going to want to knock it out of the park like an athletic endeavor. That's how we approach it, like an athlete.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I spoke with Rick last week, also about the tour. He's excited about the extra members being added to the game because it will help you guys shine. And he's
Yeah.
excited about them taking a little bit of the spotlight as well because they can potentially carry the torch of triumph ahead, no?
Yeah, and he's
Eh,
doing other stuff. He's coming out with a book of poetry next week.
Yeah,
Like he's become a really amazing author, you know.
yeah,
I think probably have those his books will probably be available during the tour and stuff.
yeah.
He's like a bear at the fair. Honest to God, I haven't seen Rick Emmett this excited since he was, 18 years old. So
That's good to know. Yeah, yeah.
he's pretty pumped up, you
He
know.
is. Yeah. He's
Yeah.
working out too. So,
Oh yeah, he got a trainer, and yeah,
yeah,
he's into it, man. We compare notes, and
yeah.
I've been really lucky. My friend, the singer in Larry Gowan in Styx,
Hmm.
who's a great keyboard player, great singer there with Tommy Shaw, and Larry's a buddy of mine. And so when we put this together, I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, man, you've been out there. You did like 95 shows last year or whatever you did. He did a tremendous number of shows." And I said, "Give me some tips for the road." So he's been full of suggestions and stuff. He's been very helpful because he's kind of like an extended member of our band because he's performed Triumph songs at Canada's Walk of Fame during our induction
Hmm.
and things like that have been just like you can never ever separate that relationship. He recorded many of his early records were recorded in my studio at Metalworks, and we're great friends. So he's a coach too there in the background.
Right, right. And well, about new songs, I just want to, a sidebar here. I spoke with Stuart Copeland a few years ago, right during COVID, when COVID hit. And I asked him about the Police reunion. Why didn't they record new stuff back then? That was 2007, right, when they reunited. He said that Sting kind of froze when he started to write because they were very different people then and, different musicians. He wouldn't be the same as the classic material. What's your take on the Triumph situation? Is it something you guys consider or have discussed?
I look at it this way. I've considered just everything, and
Mm,
that's why this tour happened, right? Is
yeah,
because as much as I had said no, I like what I'm doing up here at Metalworks, and I'm, very comfortable. I don't need to go tour, but
yeah,
suddenly circumstances change, and then, whether it was Mike Klink and what he was saying, or obviously the people in the business side have always been pushing us to tour,
yeah.
but we didn't have a manager as an example. But what ended up happening again is another fantastic fluke. So there's our manager now, Jason Murray. Believe
Mm.
it or not, he started his career in music at Metalworks as a co-op student from high school.
Oh, wow.
And you can't make this stuff up. So his father, Jim Murray, is an unbelievable guy, and he's so well known in our city here. He's one of the fathers of the city of Mississauga, I'd really say. He's the chairman of the Hazel McCallion Foundation.
Hmm.
I worked, Hazel was very near and dear to me. And, I did some fundraising on some issues for the hospital here that were related to Hazel. She was sort of the front person. And so we were always very close, and I was close with Jason's dad. And when I'm going through the managers, and we realized because when we decided to do this, I said to Mike, I said, "There's no way that that we can handle this without somebody that's really really a top drawer manager." And Jason went through my mind, and it was kind of like the connection to his dad, and I went, "Yeah, he's the guy." And it was such a great decision as it turns out because he's become like a band member. Like everyone loves him, and he's making great decisions. And he's as I said, Jason, you're steering the bus, and I'm in the back seat. So I'll try not to rear seat drive on you. Is
Yeah.
It's another real great thing. So to answer your question, like I don't rule anything out in the future. I just
Hmm.
let the future unroll, roll out in front of us, I should say. So if you look at what can happen when you're on the bus or in the hotel, like can a song start from that was no one's real idea, and it was just like, hey, what this lick, and then
Yeah.
boom, a lick leads to a melody, leads to a lyric, or so. Hey, we'll just see. It's just one of those things.
Right, right. Well, fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed.
Well, I
Uh,
got a big recording studio, many of them here at
of
Metalworks. We got like
course.
6 studios, so we can
Yeah,
get places to do it. That's not a problem.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you about the Canadian connection with the band because, Canada has produced so many great rock acts, but Triumph feels uniquely Canadian when it comes to like optimism, the high spirits of the lyrics. You see that as a cultural trait of being Canadian? I live in Toronto as well, and I do notice that on, born Canadians. I wasn't born here, but yeah, been here for about 8 years.
Well, it's interesting because I love the United States. I love Americans. Um, I'm a proud Canadian too.
Mhm.
I mean, I love Canada. They're great countries. There's great people. Uh, wherever you travel in North
Yeah,
America, uh, never mind the rest of the world. I mean, but right here in North America, we have great places if you're a musician to play. I think our lyrics, which have really, I think the point has been driven home to Rick and Mike and I by the fans. This is what you meant. We didn't know what
yeah,
we meant. We were just kids, and we're just trying to make a song, play somewhere, have an audience. And you start from ground zero. You've got no fans, no songs, no nothing. And you start through emulation. So we started and we played some Led Zeppelin songs because there's a great band to copy.
of
And
course.
some
Yeah,
some Hendrix. There's a great artist to copy. So you start from nothing. You start with other people's ideas, and then when things start to develop, you have no idea what your signature is because you don't have a signature. Led Zeppelin had a signature. You don't have one.
yeah,
As time goes on, I guess you start to develop one, or you don't. And in our case, there wasn't, I don't think, a design other than a design to be good musicians and try to make songs that people would like. Whether it was a rah rocking song to make people be uplifted through enthusiasm, or whether it was a more, you know, emotional landscape, I'll
mhm,
say, that cause you to reflect, so on and so forth. But what our fans have driven like a stake, through our heart is it's about never surrender. That's what it's about. It's about fight the good fight. It's about follow your heart. It's about hold on to your dreams. And
yeah,
so they're telling us at the end of the day, what they want, that what the rock and roll machine really is delivered what you just mentioned, which is a message of positivity. One of the guys in our documentary, one of the interviews, there was a comment that was made about us guys being I don't know, the guys in white or riding a white horse or something. I don't know
uh,
what it was. But, I said this previously, like we just weren't Dungeon and Dragons guys, and yet
yeah,
we played with Motorhead. We played with Ozzy. I love Dungeons and Dragons, Black Sabbath. I love all that stuff.
yeah,
But it didn't come out of us. Mike and I were bluesmen.
yeah,
So the blues is what comes to me. So when I listen, my favorite band in America, right, is but for the last, I don't know, since Triumph started, ZZ Top. It's my favorite band. Billy
right,
Gibbons, you know. But really, when I'm listening to Billy Gibbons, I'm listening back, to Albert King, and I'm listening back even
yeah,
to Memphis Blues. I'm listening to
yeah,
Booker T and the MGs, and Duck Dunn on bass, and Al Jackson playing drums. That was
yeah,
my favorite drummer when I got started. So we're all a product of all these influences here, and Triumph somehow is this amalgamation of two bluesmen, and then Rick was more like progressive and classical. Like this doesn't make sense.
yeah,
Why are these people even in the same band? You
yeah,
know? So it's like you throw three chefs in the kitchen, and they each have different specialties, or maybe two or one, and the other guy's different, and then
yeah,
you come up with a new recipe. So that's how I think a band, you know, uh, ends up with a signature. You start out, and I don't care if you're, the Beatles, and you're copying Chuck Berry. That's how you start, copying
yeah,
Chuck Berry and, Buddy Holly, and then you know, even
yeah,
even even Led Zeppelin. I mean, they've said that, some of the great American bluesmen, Howlin' Wolf and people like that, they were their, primary influences.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And well, let me ask you about Metalworks because we spoke about artist development and creativity, and you probably saw a lot of that at Metalworks while, your clients were working there because the studio has produced a lot of artists in different stages of their career, right? You had Prince, Cranberries, Rush, at the tail end of their career, a lot of different artists in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I I've seen a lot come and go through the
Hmm.
doors at Metalworks, to say the least. And I'm personally grateful to all the artists that have recorded there, because I've said this many times, like a recording studio is nothing without, artists recording. It's the sounds that come out of there that really create the reputation for the studio. The studio itself is a bunch of equipment and space. It's kind of like without fans, a band is nothing. The same principle for a recording studio.
Yeah.
Um, Artist development's changed a ton, and what really bothered me is that the lack of music education that we've seen in schools and how it's been depleted.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it wasn't for high school music, I don't know whether I ever would have played drums, because I had braces on my teeth, and music was compulsory. And the music teacher that I had in grade nine, he hated drummers. And he said that right away, because he said, when the first class, he said, okay, everyone that wants to play clarinet, put your hands up. Three girls put their hand up. Everyone that wants to play flute, put your hand up. Two girls put their hand up. Everyone that wants to play trumpet, put your hands up. One guy,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Who wants to play trombone? Three guys, two girls. Who wants to play oboe? Nobody. Who wants to play drums? 25 kids put their hands up.
Oh, shoot.
And you know what he said? He said, well, drummers are idiots, so no one's playing drums. And then he stopped, and he kind of scowled, and he turned around and he looked back at the class. He said, is there anybody in here that actually knows has a drum or knows how to play it? And my friend Gord put up his hand, because he did have his drums. He had wealthy parents, and he had a drum set in his
Right.
basement. He said, okay, you're a drummer. So I took trumpet because I had to, and the trumpet mashed my lips
Oh,
because of the
shoot.
braces on my teeth. So after 2 weeks, I had a really clever ploy, I thought. So I went to, his name was Mr. Green. So I went to Mr. Green and I said, Mr. Green, I got to quit playing trumpet. I really want to get on drums. And he goes, don't you remember what I said about drummers? And I said, yeah. And I said, well, why do you want to do it then? And I said, like, because of this. So I went like this, and I lifted up my top lip, and it was all like bloody and
Right.
just swollen. And he goes, oh, okay, but you can't play in the class. Practice room over there is soundproof. Go in there and don't come out. And he handed me 26 American rudiments that he had in his desk, and he shoved them at me. And he says, go in that room and don't come out. 45 minutes every single day. I
Oh,
went in
wow.
that room, first class every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So the kids are, deprived of that. So when you say, like, how do you get launched? How do you learn?
Yeah.
Kids need to be taught. So, that's part of the reason why, we started a school at Metalworks, as well as our studios and our sound and lighting company and everything. It's like, we want to be able to get kids a toehold before they get into the business, whether it's in playing, whether it's in producing, whether it's engineering, whether it's performing, whether it's on the business side and management and publishing and all that sort of stuff. And we've most recently started a charity called Sounds Unite Canada, and its mission is actually to deliver, like, over a mobile device, free music education
Oh,
and
wow.
free music wellness resources. And all you need to access it in Canada is a cell phone, and it's all free, and it's to try to support the public education system. It's free to music teachers. We have made it available to the Coalition of Canadian Music Education across the country, and that's all to help artists kind of get started and get a bit of a toehold, because
Yeah.
we had nothing. There was no drum teacher for me. There was no school I could go to. I started out following bands around, and then, the next thing you know, I convinced somebody to let me be a roadie. And so there was a band in grade 11 and 12. They were a lot older than I was in high school. And I said, can I, my buddy Fred and I said, can we be roadies? And they said, well, not if you want to get paid. So we said, oh no, we don't want to get paid. We don't want to get, we don't want to get paid. We just want to be there. And as funny as it sounds, it's true, right?
Yeah.
That's what, that's how you learned.
Yeah. How'd you get to singing? Because at the time you started, there weren't too many examples of people doing that. Maybe Phil Collins, Karen Carpenter, I guess, but not too many, right?
It was terrible. The only reason I sang was because we realized in a trio, because we were bound and determined to have a trio. And Rick's a very good singer. But we realized, well, if Rick sings all the songs, then, a lot of the stuff we wanted to do, the big theatrical landscape that we wanted, because Mike Levine is such a great character on stage, and Rick is
Yeah.
such a dynamic front man. And we said, well, if we have him at the mic, so Gil, you're going to have to sing. And I was like, oh, Jesus, not this again. So playing drums and singing is just stupid. It's like being an electrician and a plumber at the same time. Like sooner or later, you got your hand on the drain and you touch the 240 volts and you're, spontaneous combustion kind of thing. But
Right.
anyway, I didn't like it for the longest time. And then this is the funny thing about music. I like singing, I just didn't like me. And then I got really fortunate, and another friend of mine directed me to a vocal instructor. He's no longer with us, but he was a classical tenor and taught bel canto in a very, very rudimentary, structured fashion. And when I met him, he said, Gil, I don't care how you sing. You can be like one of these rock idiots that yells, or you can be, Pavarotti. You can be whatever the heck you want, but I'll tell you how it works and how to do it. And then he made me like singing. So I went from thinking it was just a nuisance that a drummer had to do as a side gig to actually enjoying it. And I still enjoy it. It's fun. And I sang to my kids when they were babies, and in the car, and it's fun to sing. It's a
Right.
great experience actually. It's not
Yeah.
as much fun as playing drums, but it's
Yeah,
fun.
well, I'm really excited about the potential of this tour, particularly on the vocal department, because there's a potential for so many harmonies, right? With you and Phil was a great singer in his own right. And yeah, gonna be awesome. Yeah.
Phil X, I cannot tell you how amazing his vocals have become. And when I say become,
Mm.
it's because I can remember back years ago when he was getting going with vocals and
Hmm.
how it's improved. He gets better every single year. And I don't have that background with Todd Kearns, but I can tell you what, he is a smoking good vocalist. Like
Is
Todd,
awesome. Yeah.
Todd's
Yeah.
vocals are great, and anybody
Yeah.
can watch him on YouTube and just see, man, this guy can just sing his butt off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're gonna have more vocal horsepower than we ever had, you
Yeah.
know, back in
Yeah.
the day. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, man, I'm really excited about the six-piece trio, and I have my ticket for April 24th here in Toronto. I will see
amazing.
you there.
Okay, I
Yeah.
look forward to seeing you too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the interview, Gil. All the best with the tour.
You bet. All
Cheers.
the best. Bye
Bye.
now.
Bye.